In 4th grade, I began to hear voices other than my conscience, seemingly my conscience, right? Auditory hallucinations. I couldn't understand what they were saying. They were murmuring constantly in my head, angrily. So I didn't tell anybody. You know, I didn't show a true psychosis from my diagnosed bipolar disorder until I was 17 and a half. And in the year 2000, I attempted to take my life, to die by suicide from my pain. I never say the word commit because I don't believe in that terminology. Committing suicide sounds like someone's committing a crime or adultery. I attempted to die by suicide just like one would die of liver, heart, lung, or kidney disease. My disease is of the brain. And I've been lucky enough to survive my attempt, which was drastic, which 99% of people who attempt that way die. I've been lucky enough to live through that attempt, to see life through a different lens. A lens filled with beauty, no matter the pain I'm in because of my bipolar disorder. In that, I was put on a mission. In my hospital stay and my psych ward stay after my attempt and after my physical recovery from jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge, a Franciscan friar came in to see me one day. He was the chaplain of the hospital. He didn't check the chart. He comes in smiling and he says, "Hey kid, what are you in for?" I said, "Brother, I jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge." Leaning, and he looked at me and he said, "Oh yeah? And I'm the Pope." I said, "Brother, no, that's what happened. That's why I'm putting on my back brace." And he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I feel so silly. Let's pray." On the last day of my stay, he said, "Kid, I expect you'll talk about this."
Ten years ago, I interviewed 100 fascinating people and documented their stories in a 2-volume book series. Today, my journey continues. I'll be engaging with captivating guests, having candid, meaningful, and uncensored discussion as I aim to reveal the passion that comes from within, unlocking the mysteries needed to make purposeful change. My objective is to be a connector and enlighten listeners through stories of struggle and success, heartache and inspiration, offering solutions to challenges we face each and every day. This is a broadcast of real people, real stories, and real conversation. Everyone has a story. My job is to ensure their stories are told. My name is Roger Brooks. Inspired by Brian Rose of London Real and the London Real Academy and the Broadcast Yourself Accelerator course, I now bring you American Real. Welcome to American Real, where this week I had the honor to sit down with Kevin Hines, author of Cracked, Not Broken, Surviving and Thriving After a Suicide Attempt. Kevin's inspiring story may leave you in tears. At 19 years of age, he survived after jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. Today, Kevin tells his story across the globe with a purpose to share his candid truth, instilling a glimmer of light to as many people as he could touch. Kevin has an engaging personality, and I learned some important life lessons through our conversation. If you like this episode, please share it with your friends and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're longing to write the next chapter in your life and need some guidance on how to do so, please visit our website at AmericanReal.tv for more information and how we could help. And now, without further ado, I bring to you Mr. Kevin Hines. And welcome to American Real. This is Roger Brooks, and this week my guest is Kevin Hines, author of Cracked, Not Broken, Surviving and Thriving After a Suicide Attempt. Kevin, I'm so honored to have you here in our studio today. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
It's
Appreciate
great.
it, Roger.
It's great. Look, as I told you earlier, I've been researching your videos and reading your book. Really, it's been a whirlwind the last 24 hours, and to say I'm not touched would be an understatement. I can't wait to get into this today. But before we get started, you've been on quite a ride here, traveling all over, and I'm just interested. What has that experience been like? Reaching out, touching people, and actually seeing others hear your story and really take it to heart.
It's been a long journey. 17 years I've spent, so the better part of 20 years, sharing a story about hope and healing and the art of wellness and the ability to find recovery. I live in recovery every day. Some people might not understand that. They might think that means that I live with substance use disorder. But in fact, I live with a diagnosed mental illness, one that has affected me since I was 17 and a half years of age. And in the year 2000, I attempted to take my life, to die by suicide from my pain. I never say the word commit because I don't believe in that terminology. Committing suicide sounds like someone's committing a crime or adultery. I attempted to die by suicide just like one would die of liver, heart, lung, or kidney disease. My disease is of the brain. And I've been lucky enough to survive my attempt, which was drastic, which 99% of people who attempt that way die. I've been lucky enough to live through that attempt, to see life through a different lens, a lens filled with beauty, no matter the pain I'm in because of my bipolar disorder. In that, I was put on a mission. In my hospital stay, in my psych ward stay after my attempt and after my physical recovery from jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge, a Franciscan friar came in to see me one day. He was the chaplain of the hospital. He didn't check the chart. He comes in smiling and he says, "Hey kid, what are you in for?" And I said, "Brother," he's kept the black robe and the white robe and the red rosary in one hand. I said, "Brother, I jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. Leaning to my right was my cane. I was putting on my back brace." And he looked at me and he said, "Oh yeah?" And I'm the Pope. He didn't believe me. He thought I was delusional because I was in a psych ward. I said, "Brother, no, that's what happened. That's why I'm putting on my back brace." And he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I feel so silly. Let's pray." And he comes over to my left side. He puts his hand on my forehead as he counts to the rosary, and we pray. I've been a praying man my whole life, not pushing that on anybody. And at the end of the prayer, he says, "Kid, when you get better, you want to talk about this." And I remember looking at him and saying, quote unquote, "About what to who?" I had no idea what he meant. I would learn later. Every day in the hospital after that day, he would come to visit me as a chaplain. He would pray with me and he would say, "Kid, when you get better, you gotta talk about it." It went from oughta to gotta talk about this. His name was Brother George Cherry. He's in my film Suicide: The Ripple Effect, coming out next year. And every day, on the last day of my stay, he said, "Kid, I expect you'll talk about this." Roger, I still had no idea what he meant. I brushed it off my shoulder, What is he talking about? Well, my father and I got out of the hospital. I had gone in the hospital from wheelchair to a walker and a back brace to a back brace and a cane. Got out of there in the back brace and the cane, and my father takes me to church on Sunday. The church I'd grown up in my entire life, St. Cecilia's in San Francisco. The church I was confirmed at by the same priest that was there at that time, Father Michael Harriman, who would become a Monsignor who would marry my wife and I later on. And we're in the service, and it's one of those things where you feel like it's talking right to you, but so does everybody else in the whole place. And I'm hobbling out of there, and the priest comes. Father Harriman says, "Kevin, how would you like to come and talk about your experience on Good Friday. It hadn't been 7 months. Still the back brace, still the cane, hobbling around. And I had made my way down the steps. I had to come back up. My dad helped me. And I looked at the priest and I said, Father, I don't have a speech and I wouldn't know what to say. And that's when my father, who's 6'1", shoved me forward and he said, he'll do it! And that's how my dad is. And I turned around and I said, Dad, what are you doing? And he says, you'll do this. We need closure. And I'm thinking, you need closure? I need to go home and lay down. Good Friday rolls around. I write a speech till 3 a.m. Not mentally healthy. It's 17 pages long. It's 45 minutes to read. I give the speech at the rectory in front of 120 cross-legged, sitting down, Catholic uniformed kids, thinking, who is this helping? Why am I doing this? I'm a joke. I get through the 45-minute speech. I'm leaning on my cane the whole time, dropping page by page to the floor with my left hand. I'm crying during the whole speech, and I'm shaking, thinking it had no impact. Hands go up immediately, and the kids say, thank you for sharing your story. I feel that way sometimes. I have depression. I get called back to the rectory, and here's the point to the question you asked. I get called back to the rectory 2 weeks later. Father Harriman hands me an envelope filled with 120 letters from 120 kids. 6 of those kids' letters were actively suicidal, and they wrote it in those letters. Because they were minors, under the age of 18, those letters were screened and they were given help. And those kids are alive today. Now, I didn't do that. What did that was the power of storytelling with the aspect of recovery. That can change, save a life. I have been on the road telling my story around the world ever since. I haven't stopped. I travel 300 days out of the year.
Can you take us back to your childhood? I think I was reading in your book, there was at some point you had maybe a seizure. And when were you aware maybe that something might have been going on?
In 4th grade, I began to hear voices other than my conscience, seemingly my conscience, right? Auditory hallucinations. I couldn't understand what they were saying. They were murmuring constantly in my head, angrily. I could never make out what they were saying. But I was in 4th grade, so I didn't know what the hell was going on. So I didn't tell anybody. I just was like, what is going on? I just freaked out when it happened. And I let it go and it stopped. I was a pretty energetic kid. Some would call me the Energizer Bunny and say that I had boundless energy. Doctors today might say that was early onset mania. But hindsight is 20/20. I didn't show a true psychosis from my diagnosed bipolar disorder until I was 17 and a half. At 17, I was performing in a theater show at my high school, and I had been acting really erratic for some time. During the play rehearsals, some instances occurred, and I was absolutely, my mind was breaking down. I was having what doctors back then would call a mental breakdown. Slowly first, and then I happened to be, after this erratic behavior, doing the opening night show in my high school. I was a lead character, and I'm on stage, right, and I'm wearing one of my father's old suits and ties that they had kind of hemmed to fit me, and I'm playing this character called Gatch in How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, a philandering businessman. And I start to believe that 1,200 people, the audience, which is full, they just renovated the theater, 1,200 person filled to the last seat, I started to think that they were there to kill me. I was petrified, as you can imagine. I missed my blocking. I missed my lines. Chaos ensued on stage because I was one of the leads. The crew didn't know what to do, and I ran off stage. I ran to the lobby where Mr. Fennell, my theater director, teacher, mentor, and good friend, who would be the first person I'd lose to suicide of 6 people in my lifetime, he said, "Kevin, it's not even intermission. Can you please finish the performance?" And I just babbled incoherent nonsense for the next 10 minutes. I could not make out 3 consecutive words in a row, let alone a sentence. He called my mom. Mom comes in, takes me home. Very soon thereafter, I see my first psychiatrist, who would die of an overdose of methamphetamine use, potentially a suicide, later on. I start seeing this gentleman every week, sometimes twice a week. I'm eventually diagnosed with bipolar disorder type 1 with psychotic features, and 3 times eventually after that, later on, corroborated by 3 different doctors. From the age of 17 to 19, 19 is when I attempted off the bridge. From the age of 17 to 19, it's just a rocky road. I'm living with my father, parents divorced. I'm a complete mess. I'm skyrocketing to manic episodes and crashing into depression every week. And I hid my true symptoms from my father. I hid the depth of my pain from everyone. I was having such paranoid delusions, I thought the Postal Service was trying to kill me on a regular basis. I was hearing and seeing things that nobody else could see or hear, but that I believed to be real. I was having visions of Death himself, the Grim Reaper, coming to talk to me every night. And yet I buried it. I was in a massive amount of denial. I don't have this disease. I don't like it, and I don't want it. I don't want the label of having a mental illness, I would tell myself. I would say there's nothing wrong with me. And yet all these things were occurring. I was on medication. I was haphazardly taking it when I wanted to. I just wanted to go back to being the kid that was fun, happy-go-lucky, filled with boundless energy, and loved life. But he had disappeared, and I couldn't get him back. And in the year 2000, it became too much to bear. The weight of all of my combined pain and struggle, it destroyed me. And voices in my head told me I had to die. And I believed them. That's what depression is. It's a vicious liar, making you believe that you have no value, no worth, and are a burden to all who love you, when those are usually the furthest things from the truth. And eventually, I made my way to the Golden Gate and I did what I did. But at the millisecond that my hands left that rail, instant regret for my actions and the absolute recognition that I had just made the greatest mistake of my life, and it was too late.
So, can you tell us what was going on in your mind the days leading up to that day?
Sure. Days leading up to that day, I've been spending a lot of time in the bathroom looking at the mirror, at this man I no longer knew, liked, or loved. This wretched face of this hateful, spiteful, angry human being. It became as if, you ever seen the film The 25th Hour with Edward Norton Jr.? Remember that scene?
Yeah.
Where he's in the mirror yelling at himself?
Yes.
All those horrible things. Yeah. It was like that, but 10 times worse. And that mirrored man was berating me, attacking me, and eventually telling me what I had to do. that it was inevitable, that I had no choice, that I had to die. And I could not recognize that it was always just me. At one point, while my father was at work, I punched that mirrored man. And of course, all that happened was my bloody hand and a broken mirror. When my father asked me about it, I said, I opened it too far, it hit the wall and broke. He said, what happened to your hand? I said, I did in the kitchen cut it. He knew. On the 24th of September, the voices in my head were just insidious, quietly creeping in and making plans. And I wrote a note to my mom and my dad, my brother, my sister, my girlfriend, and my best friend, Jake Lewis. I told him I loved him. I told him I had to go. I said to my best buddy, you'll find another best friend. It's not how it works. My father, on the morning of, he pleaded with me to be with him that day. He pleaded with me to just hang out because he could see something was wrong. I convinced my father to take me to City College that day. And I told him I'd take the bus home, knowing where I was going to go and what I was going to do. That's, I think, the worst part about that day. Because my dad actually tried to help me. But he didn't know the tools of suicide prevention. He did the best with what he knew. Kev, hang out with me today. Let's go to the beach, let's go to the movies. Just work with me today. I want you to be with me today. And I ended up getting in his car, gripping my shoulder bag to my chest because I didn't want him to find the note in my notebook in my bag. He talked the whole ride. We got to this particular area outside of the school. He said, Kevin, I love you, be careful. I kissed my dad on the cheek. I said, I love you too, Dad. And I got out of the car. What happened next was these 2 bus rides of self-hate. Self-loathing and depression are a package deal. I sat on the final bus, crying like a child, hoping that one person would look to me and say, hey, kid, are you okay? Is something wrong? Or can I help you? That was the pact I made with myself. If one person says that, or a variation of it, I will tell them everything and beg them for help.
No one said anything.
No one did. Well, one man said something. This guy sitting next to me said to the fellow next to him, while pointing at me with his thumb, with a smile on his face, what the hell's wrong with that kid? Apathy. I talk about it in my speeches. The ability us human beings have to see someone in pain and think that it's not our problem bogs my mind. I'm not saying we can all help everyone. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm not saying there's not fear involved from someone you don't know and trying to help them. But if we just remembered that we used to be a communal society, helping one another through a barter system. We used to be in tribes, in groups, where we all took care of one another. In Aboriginal culture, I have a friend named Joe Williams who travels with me and speaks to me often. Joe Williams is an NRL player and a former boxing champion in Australia. And the Aboriginal culture, there are no words in Australian Aboriginal culture for please, thank you, or can I have? Because everything was always shared equally. Can you imagine if American culture tried to tackle that one? No please and thank you because we always give. And I think that that's what people have forgotten in this society. That apathetic tone people take when someone's crying and they're like, oh, we gotta get away from that guy. You know, that guy looks like a goofball. That guy's weird.
We do the reverse.
That culture. When you say to someone, how are you? What is their answer? 95% of the time. I'm fine, I'm good, or I'm okay. Even if they're having the shittiest day of their life, they lie to you because they don't want to burden you. And they sometimes know that maybe you, not necessarily you, but someone, is just going through the motions of asking the question. Because when they start saying, look at the time, I'll get back to you, I'll call you. In a work system, in colleague systems, nobody's mental health is looked upon at a job site. In a general manner, there are certain companies that do it well, but most companies always care about their bottom line and not the well-being of their worker. My point is, we used to be a communal society. We have forgotten all about that with the digital age, and we are treading down a path that is dangerous for everyone. For all our kids, they need support in a way where if you want to stop suicide in this country, one thing we're going to have to do is teach people about it at every level of clinician, scholastic level, military, law enforcement, dentists. Every occupation you can think of should have pamphlets in their office about how to spot someone who's potentially in that state of mind. And every therapist and clinician should be mandated to take suicide prevention training, but they're not. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. In California, Governor Jerry Brown was the governor for some time, and they brought a bill to Governor Jerry Brown stating that all high school and college teachers and counselors should be trained in suicide prevention efforts, and all mental health clinicians. The mental health clinicians fought it. They said, we know that stuff. No, you don't, because people wouldn't be dying if you did.
Right.
And there's no experts in suicide prevention, or else there wouldn't be suicide.
But there are signs, obviously.
There are signs.
You showed the
Let's
signs.
talk about that. Yeah, I did actually. There are a lot of people now who talk to me and they say, I didn't see any signs, I didn't see any signs, I didn't see any signs. You have to look sometimes really deep. Because when someone you know eats regular meals, and they stop eating regularly, and they're thinning out, and they're not having their breakfast, lunch, and dinner like they used to have, or their snacks, that's a sign that something's wrong. Maybe not suicide, but that's certainly a sign something's wrong. On the opposite side, when someone who doesn't eat a ton begins to gain a ton of weight, that's a sign that they're overeating and they're compensating. Potentially a sign. When someone who sleeps well, finds a lack of sleep, and follows into insomnia, that's very dangerous. Insomnia causes psychosis, that's a sign. You couple that with weeks of depression, weeks of talk about being angry or upset or hurting or in pain, coupling that with things like people saying to their friends or family who should know these signs, God, I just don't like this life anymore. You'd think people would know what that meant, but they don't. They don't. When someone says, I don't like this life anymore, you just go, oh, no, it'll get better. But you don't dig deep. At that point, when someone says that, I don't want to be here anymore, that's a damn large sign. And you have to turn to that person. Find the ability to sit them down in a comfortable space. Look them in the eye with a caring view. Empathy in your heart. A complete lack of judgment. Don't say that's wrong. Don't say that's bad. That will turn them off immediately. Look them in the eye and say, how can I help? You don't look very well, and you just told me you're fine. I don't think you are fine. I think you're having a really hard time in your head, and I think you're not talking about it. Does that sound familiar? Let them speak from there. Then when they speak, and they tell you what they tell you, and they haven't told you they're suicidal, it's important that you say, I gotta tell you, I've been taught this, and I think I should ask. Pardon me for asking, I don't mean to hurt your feelings, but have you ever considered suicide? Are you in danger of suicide right now? Now, there are going to be people that look you in the eye and lie straight to your face. There will be those people. But there will be people that well up water in their eyes. And then you know. And they might say, how did you know? And then you can have time for a conversation. And sometimes, the only thing standing between suicide attempts or deaths by suicide is time. 36, 42, 72 hours. If you can buy that time, that moment can potentially pass. My father used to be fond of saying to me in my greatest of pains, in my greatest of struggles, Kevin, you are lying in 2 feet of water and you are drowning. All you must do is stand. I've effectively stood against suicide and suicidal ideations for the better part of 20 years. I have chronic suicidal thoughts. I maintain that I'll never die that way because I have hope. And even when I don't have hope, Roger, I look forward and I say to myself, it's there. I just gotta keep inching step by step onward and upward because I will reach it. But people don't understand the amount of hard, dedicated, efficient work it takes to thrive, not just survive, with a severe mental illness. It takes building a routine of things like talk therapy or proven reputable forms of therapy. True meditation in all its proven forms. Mindfulness techniques like we did when we started. We both did breathing exercises. I do that all the time. Before every speech, before every big thing in my life, I take time to do a thing called 4-7-8. I inhale through my nose for 4 seconds. I hold for 7. I release for 8. It lowers my blood pressure. It lowers my heart rate. It lowers things like if I had an adrenaline rush, it would lower it. If I had panic, it would calm it. If I had anxiety, it would quell it. I do that when I need to. I don't recommend it if you do have low blood pressure. That's not the right thing to do. But I do those things. I educate myself as to the latest and greatest findings in bipolar disorder so I can be free from the pain most of the time or the best of my ability. I eat healthily most days. Most days, right? I exercise every day without fail. 23 minutes of rigorous exercise leads to 12 hours of better mood, right? Who doesn't want that? If you're physically capable and you're not exercising, here's a profound moment, exercise.
So tell us about that. What do you do 23 minutes?
So I don't like the gym, although I do go. I like weights. I often find myself working out because of my time schedule in my hotel rooms. I travel 300 days out of the year speaking. I often work out every day whenever I'm not working. Having quiet time with my wife, engaging with a friend, I am exercising. I'm doing pull-ups. I'm doing push-ups of all kinds in every form. I'm doing explosive push-ups to tone muscle and to lean up. I don't do crunches because I have a metal plate in my back because of my attempt. I can't do crunches. I run in place in my hotel room until I sweat. I prefer that to treadmills where everyone's staring at you or you feel like everyone is. I do get into the gym at some hotel, probably once, twice a week for those weights because that's my fix. And I do this every day. Imagine if we all took our free time, every bit of it, which most people today don't have a lot of, but you have 2, 4, 6, 10 minutes here and there. And in those 2, 4, 6, 10 minutes, you're exercising. Imagine if you did that every day for 6 months. How good would you feel?
Yeah.
The endorphins would be moving on a constant basis. You would be better brain well in no time. I do that. I draw. I sketch. I haven't sketched in a while, but when I sketched and when I learned to sketch things that weren't scary, a lot of my old sketches were very terrifying. Comic book characters and villains that were very scary. I remember my mom once saying to me, Kevin, that's petrifying. Why are you drawing that? This is something. She thought something was wrong. What I realized through learning about art therapy, which is very important to people to benefit their brain health, that's a good coping strategy, art therapy. I learned it in a psych ward from an art therapist named Art. He was a Korean guy from Hawaii. And I realized I had that in me my whole life. So painting and drawing and writing, it's all therapy. Music therapy I use every night, 20 minutes before I go to bed, because it helps me sleep. Here's an idea. Ready? If you want to sleep better, it's a big idea. Pandora, the sleep channel.
Yeah.
Do it 20 minutes before you go to bed every night.
I love it. I listen to it.
You see, if you have a sleep problem, and you do this, in my opinion, I would say 3 to 6 months exactly, you're going to see a massive improvement in your sleep. What is stopping you from these simple common sense tools to be better brain well? Now, some people would say, oh, Kevin, what about my son? He doesn't know he's unwell. Okay? Your son doesn't realize he's sick. He's in complete denial. He doesn't take the medications. He doesn't believe he's sick. He doesn't go to therapy. Here's my suggestion. Start writing your son letters from 3 to 5 people in the family. Letters that have 5 things. Messages of complete empathy, explaining your complete lack of judgment, total compassion, unconditional love, and most importantly, the things you are worried that you see in your son that scare you. The signs, the symptoms, and the triggers of the things you recognize that he's going through. Have 3 to 5 people that he knows loves him write letters just like that. Different letters, same message. Share with your son care packages, and I mean this. Put those letters that you handwrite. I'm not no typing up stuff. Handwrite those letters from 3 to 5 people that love your son. Record them on a recording so he can hear them being said. Put that all together with a caring package of things you know your son, daughter, friend, loved one, husband, wife, fiance, whoever, things they love and care for, their favorite things. Get a basket of their favorite things. Put the letters inside. You now have incentive for them to actually read the letters. What they're finding out is that these kinds of caring letters, which they bring to psych wards in generic form, help people lower recidivism into psych wards. They help people lower their rate, their scales on the depression scale. They help people lower suicidal crisis. Because you are no longer telling someone in one ear and out the other, you're showing them you care.
Right.
And showing someone you care is much more powerful than telling someone any day of the week. That's my suggestion. Now, that's not the answer. That's an idea that's working all around the world.
And, as you're talking, I'm thinking about it. Do you think most people with their children, they think certain things, but they just don't express them, so the kids may not ever know how you really feel?
The kids don't know how you feel because parents don't know how to talk to their kids about mental health and brain health, more importantly. If your brain is malfunctioning, there goes the rest of you. And a lot of parents are in denial themselves. Mm-hmm. Nothing's wrong with my son. Nothing's wrong with my daughter. A lot of parents tend to be overprotective and think that if something's wrong with their brain, that means it came from me. So the part of them that is denying that their son or daughter is sick is also pridefully saying, we didn't give them that. That's a huge mistake.
So what do you recommend people do if they observe someone, family, friend, what have you? Because some parents are so difficult, when it comes to their own children. How do you approach the parents?
So there's no one answer here, but I would say a really important thing to do is to gingerly bring up the topic to the parents and say, we're very worried about so-and-so. We think they're very unwell, and we think they need to get some treatment, some mental health help. And gauge the reaction. If the reaction is poor, that's mom and dad. There's not much you can do after that unless you find someone that can reach through to them and help them understand that this isn't because of them. This isn't their fault, but this can be helped. It's not enough to say go get help, because where's the help? Our mental health system is completely shattered into pieces right now in America. It's shattered into pieces. When I was giving my speech about my book, Cracked Not Broken, someone said they thought it was about the mental health system in America. Until we right that ship, we don't fund mental health. Say it costs too much money. April Foreman did a great interview. Dr. April Foreman, you should talk to her. She's the VA specialist in suicide prevention, and she's a young lady who is just spot on in the movie they got coming out called The S Word, and she says in a video that we don't fund mental health in America because it costs too much money. Yet if we did fund mental health in America, it would save costs by billions across this country. And yet,
because of the effects.
Because of the effects. Getting people off the street of homelessness would cost less money. Having less people dying of mental illness and suicide would be less in funeral costs, less in hospital care costs. It would be astronomical. Less people in jails. The jails have become the mental health homes for all of these people, and they're not being treated. They're just being horrifically treated in jails that are filled with violence, rage, rape, and it's awful.
Right.
So we need a systems change across this country if we're going to have any kind of luck righting this ship and turning this around. And we need to go back to being a communal society. We need to find a way to break the barrier of this digital world and be with one another without looking down at our phones, tablets, or computers. We need to find a way for interpersonal connection to once again be what it was meant to be. Dr. Bart Andrews, good friend of mine, work with all the time. He's in my film, Suicide: The Ripple Effect. Dr. Bart Andrews said in the film that South Korea used to be a communal society to the 10th degree. They had a tech revolution 10, 15, 20 years ago. And they went from a very communal society to a singular focused society. Their suicide rates skyrocketed through the roof, one of the highest suicide rates in the world now, where they had one of the lowest. Tech revolution, it's all to shit. If that doesn't spell it out for you,
right.
So if you were able to go back and talk to that 20-year-old you, knowing what you know today, what would you say? What would you do? What can you say right now that can potentially help people out there that may be in a similar place that you were?
Well, let me tell you, if I was able to exit this body and just be someone there for me, my 19-year-old self on that bridge, I would have stopped. I would put my hand on my shoulder, gently nudged it this way, and said, this isn't the answer. Your life matters. Your pain matters. And this isn't the end. This is just the beginning. Walk with me. Can I get you a cup of coffee? And let's chat about why you should be here.
And, I have friends that have taken their life. We have friends that their children have taken their lives. There seems to be a negative stigma attached to it that I just don't understand. Like it's a bad thing. Like you said, you're not committing a crime. You have an illness no different than an illness in your body. So it's in your mind. So what can we do as humans, fellow humans, to help each other get help?
One of the things we can do, a lot of this country is filled with faithful people. Churches need to openly say suicide is not a sin. The reason suicide became a sin all those decades ago, centuries ago, was because when someone died, they could not put any money in the coffer. They couldn't donate. So, they made it a sin. So everybody deemed it to be evil and bad. But in fact, when the brain is sick, just like every other organ in the body, it destroys, right? And instead of looking at it as evil or bad, We need to look at it as someone's brain is malfunctioning and they need help. And in order to erase the stigma, erase the discrimination against those with mental illness, we need to have a showed force of support for people who have those kinds of ideations, thoughts, ideals, and attempts, where we're not judging them. That's it. We're not judging them. We're saying, you know what, these things happen, and that's okay. It's not okay that you die. It's okay that you have the thoughts. To normalize the conversation is the first cue. Normalize the conversation. Finally get these idiot politicians to fund mental, mind, brain, and behavioral health adequately, superbly. We will see a transform in the mental health system, in the destitution of the American man who is living on the street, a transformation in the way our communities look at one another, our ethnic communities that some minorities don't even call it mental illness. They call it the willies, or there's all this cultural stigma and discrimination against those mental illness in certain cultures where they don't believe it exists. So you bring it up, and that boy's crazy. Well, we have to transform the system in order to save lives. We have to reduce access to lethal means in order to save lives. We have to do all these things simultaneously, and we have to do them with every ounce of power we have. And one of the things that bothers me about how we've been stagnant in forward movement in the suicide prevention community is that we're all arguing for the same pot of funds. So when your organization, and we're in the same general area, we do the same thing. When your organization gets the funding, the little funding that's there, we go, screw you, man. As opposed to saying, how can we bolster you up? You've got the funding. Let's help you. Let's put all our resources to help you succeed in saving lives.
Because that's what it's all about.
That's what it's about. But what's happened in suicide prevention is it's become a business. And I'm part of that. But our business, my wife and I's business in suicide prevention, all we do is help other people reach other people. We foster collaboration, true collaboration, not this on the surface stuff. Where in suicide prevention, you get the funding, I hate you. No. Put your ego away. It's not about you. It's not about the name of your organization. It's not about your organization being the best, brightest, and biggest. It's about all of us truly coming together to save this planet from suicide. Because if we don't, the organizations that run the mental health help, the foundations and organizations and 501c3s and the groups and companies all around the world that want to save lives, if we do not knock this ego shit off, we'll never save anyone more than the little we're having. We'll have it. There'll be these one-on-one effects of change. There'll be these transform lives that all these organizations are truly helping people. They are. But we need to turn this into a global scale. We need to make sure that we put our egos aside for the greater good. Or else, these suicide rates will continue to rise. It's not only unacceptable that we have this many suicides, it's deplorable. Because it is preventable. And if it is preventable, and it's not being prevented, that's on us. But it's also on the general population who ignores and denies that this is real. There's a boxer, I don't know his name, very famous heavyweight, or some kind of champion boxer. I'm not going to name him, but he did a Twitter rant the other day about how depression is fictitious, and that it's not real, and that they just need to man up and get over themselves. This is a heavyweight boxing champion, probably light heavyweight, kickboxing champion, who has a massive audience, who is perpetuating lies just to benefit his likes on social media. The problem with that is that people believe him.
Yeah.
That's the problem, because he has influence.
Especially the younger generation.
Especially the younger generation.
Yeah.
Especially those who idolize him.
Right.
He says things like, get a six-pack and start going to the gym and you won't have depression. You know, lose weight and stop eating so much food, you won't have depression. It's nonsense. I'm not trying to call him out. I'm just saying there are many, many people like him.
Mm-hmm.
They come from all walks of life all over the world. And they need to right their mind. Because if we don't have people like him in public places, public figures, adopt that we can beat depression, that we can beat mental illness, that we can stay here with suicidal thoughts, that our thoughts do not have to become our actions. We've all got to come together. We've got to become communal. And we've got to work as a team in suicide prevention in order to have a true, massive effect.
Yeah. Kevin, you've been given a second chance
Yeah,
for a reason.
you bet.
You are here in this room and on this earth for a big reason. And I know you're doing a lot. I know you're doing a lot out there. But what I really would like to know is, what do you feel your true mission, your true purpose is now for the rest of your life?
Yeah, it's very simple. My purpose is to share my truth candidly, to share how I found and maintain recovery, so I can try to instill a glimmer of hope, a glimmer of light at the end of a darkened tunnel for someone else, for someone's else, for as many people for the rest of my life until I die of natural causes. I will do this work in one way, shape, form, or another. I will try to reach millions of people and help them do the work to change their own lives. I've never saved a life. I have told a story that has helped people stand up in 2 feet of water and not drown.
So you have a new film coming out,
Yeah.
documentary,
Yeah.
Suicide, The Ripple Effect.
Yes.
Please tell us about that.
7 years ago, frankly, in 2006, when Eric Still's film The Bridge came out, so that's even more, that's like 10 years ago, 11 years ago. Eric Still's film The Bridge came out. Before that film, he had never picked up a camera. He was a producer on high-end Hollywood films. And he wanted to make a documentary that made a difference. And the film The Bridge showed 24 people die off the Golden Gate Bridge throughout the movie, and people were in an uproar. He erred on the side of caution. He tried to make sure that every time they thought someone was going to jump, they called the bridge patrol, they called 911, they got people out there, they saved 6 lives. But they wanted to show the truth at the Golden Gate. And the idea was not to say, you should do something about that. It was to say, what are we doing? It was an unbiased look at these deaths. I was in that film with my father for 10 minutes. And when I met Eric and saw what he was doing, I realized I could make a difference in film. I had wanted to be a part of film since I was 6 years old. I just didn't know how. Originally it was like acting and things like that. That's why I went to join the theater. But when I saw Eric Still's film come out in 2006 at Tribeca and San Francisco Film Festival, I knew someday I was going to make a film. And I didn't know how, I didn't know why, but I started writing conceptual treatments and media documents and putting it all together. I even wrote a script, a mock script. I put it on spec. I did everything, and I wrote that with a friend of mine named Dwight Baker. And it turned out to be something completely different. I worked with a guy named Greg DeCherry, my co-director and co-producer, and we've made a film, simply put, about stories of hope that are helping people stay here. Our motto is Be Here Tomorrow. And Be Here Tomorrow came from me, and I just thought, what is a good way to express to someone to never let go? And be here tomorrow, and then you just repeat it every day, right? And we even wrote a song at the end of the film that's in the credits, and it's of the same name. It's our anthem. And this film travels with me around the world as I share my story, and we connect to people who are all over the place sharing their stories of recovery, all from 6 countries, and
awesome.
and changing lives forever. It's a beautiful piece. You know, a lot of people focus on the depression and the pain in movies about suicide, and they're terribly depressing. This film will leave you with an action plan to help people find hope.
Oh, that's wonderful. I can't wait to see that. And when will that be out?
That'll be out next year in 2018. We don't have distribution yet. We're still working on it, but it's looking good.
Great. Well, thanks so much again for
Thank you
coming
so
on.
much.
Let's do this again.
Yeah.
And we really appreciate it.
You bet. Take care.